Bonjour, c'est moi, Madame Jones, and if you're listening to this, well done because you're all ready to revise for your higher reading exam tomorrow. You've already saved 25% of your marks for French, but listening and reading together is worth 50%. So you need to put a lot of effort into revising the keywords and the strategy for these tests. So the reading exam is divided into 3 sections. We have section A, questions in English, that's worth 28 marks out of 50, so quite a substantial amount of marks in that section. We have section B, questions in French, that tends to be seen as the more challenging section, and that's 15 marks. And we have section C, translation into English, and that is 7 marks. Let's have a look at the 2019 higher boundaries. These boundaries have been the harshest ones that we've had so far. So it's always good to have a look, what's the worst case scenario? And then we know that it can get better from there. So if we're looking at the 2019 boundaries, as a higher candidate, you want to try to get at least 31 marks out of 50 for a grade 7, and anything you can do beyond those 31 marks, that's going to be great. That's going to give you a chance of getting an 8, a chance of getting a 9. The higher reading paper doesn't actually look that different to the foundation. The 3 sections are the same, and a lot of the question types are the same. However, if you read between the lines, you will notice a few more tricks that feature on the higher paper. That's so that the examiners can decide who really gets the 9, who gets the 8, who's a 6 instead of a 5. So you need to make sure that you're looking out for those and that you've revised the small but deadly words that are featured in this PowerPoint, in our lessons, on Vocab Slam and on Arbor. You need to be very precise when you're answering the open-ended questions. Don't try to put too much in case you show that you haven't quite understood the sentence. However, you need to put the exact piece of information that the examiner wants to read, and we'll talk more about that in this presentation. Don't leave any questions blank. You've heard me say this time and time and time again in the lesson. Remember, you're aiming for those 31 marks at least, and maybe a guess will get you that answer. So always put something sensible if you're not sure, but don't leave any blanks. Although section A tends to be seen as the easier section because it's all in English, there are some questions which confuse pupils, and these often tend to be the literature questions. Now bear in mind that although these questions are taken from French novels, they are heavily adapted to be suitable for GCSE. So treat them the same as you would the other reading questions in section A. Always read the opening information so that you have some context. So for example, in this extract, we are told that it's going to be about an 11-year-old who is talking to his family about a girl that he has met. So just as we would with the other questions on this paper, we have a look at the question first to figure out what information we need to track down in the text. This one looks fairly simple. We're just trying to establish somebody's age. So it's testing numbers, which should be very basic knowledge. However, we need to be careful that they might throw in a trick. So for example, it might say, my younger sister, Maybelle, is 10 years old. However, Isabel is 14 years old. So we need to make sure the text is actually talking about Isabel. Let's have a look at it now. Remember that you can always pause this recording and work out the answers before I explain them to you. So as predicted early on, we have a very simple Elle a 12 ans. And as long as you've revised your numbers, which you definitely should have before this exam, you will figure out that the correct answer is B, 12 years old. A fairly simple answer, I'm sure that you will agree. But as I've said before, a lot of people confuse these ones because they look more complicated because you know they're from a novel, but they're actually fairly standard questions. Let's have a look at another example. So here we've got Marcel says, so important to bear in mind who is saying this, Marcel, that the girl is small, has fair hair, is pretty, has a sense of humour. Sometimes you can use the same technique that you might do in the listening, where you add in the words at the side that you know in French to help you look for what you're actually trying to find. However, this is quite time consuming if you're going to do it for every question. So I suggest you just do it for questions that you're finding a little bit more complicated, or you do it in the listening paper during the 5 minutes reading time. So let's scan through now. So we're not looking for what Marcel is, we're looking for what the girl is, and we're looking for Marcel's opinion of the girl. So here we find elle est très jolie. So again, it's pretty easy to match that one up. So if you look at it, these questions are not that complicated. Don't let it confuse you just because it's written in a different style. As usual, most of the text will not help us to find the answer. We are looking for a very specific bit of information and matching it to the question. So if we carry on with the same literature question here, have a go at this one. Remember, you can pause the recording to make sure that I don't give you any spoilers. This one is about what Marcel says about Isabelle's father. We've already used the first 2 lines of this text. Can you find the answer hidden in the rest of the text? So I have located it here. Son père est un poète. So again, writes poetry. It's not that complicated if we actually look at it. It's something that we could probably have guessed. The next question, Marcel saw a piano which made him think that Isabelle's father liked music, Isabelle was a musician, Isabelle's house was big, Isabelle's father was rich. Again, pause the recording if you want to make sure that I don't spoil this for you. If we scan through, we can clearly see the bit about the piano is towards the end, an enormous piano. Therefore, I think that her dad is very rich. Okay? So again, quite easy to find the answers. Don't let these questions catch you out because they're not as difficult as they look. One of the differences between the higher and the foundation is that in the higher exam, there are more non-multiple choice questions. So on the reading section A and B, you've got approximately 6 of these questions. And on the listening, although you only have 3 non-multiple choice, one of them is worth 10 marks. So it's really worth having a look at the mark scheme and seeing what the examiners want to be able to give you all of those marks. So we're going to do that together now. Have a look at this mark scheme. You can see that there are certain phrases that the examiners will accept and others that the examiners will reject. For this one, something like adding re to the front of your word to reconnect would have actually got your answer rejected. Therefore, it's really important that you are precise when you are writing these open-ended questions. Here are 2 more examples. For this one, why do you think I would have lost a mark for writing small dogs, but not just dogs? Hopefully you're thinking along the lines that if you look in the answer box, the question clearly says that there are large and small dogs. So if you just say one of them, that's not actually correct. You've got to imply that all of the dogs are welcome in this hotel, because I remember this question and it was about the dog hotel. I think we did it in class together as well. So that's how precise you've got to be. You've got to make sure if there is some information there, if the examiner has bothered to tell you that there's small and large dogs, you should give that information. Or you should play it safe and just say dogs in general and don't try to write too much. How about this one? Why do they reject just when she was finished by itself? So in this one, they're clearly looking for you to be very precise about what she has finished. So they're looking for the idea of school. When she finishes school, after school, when her lessons are done, they're looking for something like this. They don't just want you to put when she finished, because when she finished what? When she finished her homework, when she finished listening to music, they want you to show that you've really understood this text. In most cases, you can manage to be very precise if you're looking out for the small but deadly words in the paragraph for the reading or on the listening recording. Can you spot any small but deadly words in this paragraph? Remember, if you don't want any spoilers, pause the video now, and then you can make sure you've worked out your answer before I tell you my answers. So straight away to begin with, I can see en été. A little bit of detail here about when this is set. It's especially concerning when I see that at the end of this section, hiver. So I see two opposites, summer and winter. Straight before winter, I can see mai, one of the small but deadly words. So in summer, something, 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 but in winter, something, something, something. So we know that the examiners here could potentially trap us by asking us a question about what happens in summer versus what happens in winter. So we have to be really careful and make sure that we're giving the right piece of information. Later on, I can see car, because that might also lead us down a different path. So we need to make sure that we're looking for these words and not just ignoring them. On the final row, we have au moins, at least. So if you were answering that question, if we have a look at that longer sentence, we can see that it clearly says parler, to speak, une langue étrangère, to speak a foreign language. Now, if we're looking at that word, if we don't ignore that word, to speak at least one second language, and he speaks English and Spanish. So that little word adds a lot of detail, and when we're thinking about being precise, we need to not just ignore these words. Remember, you can find a list of several small but deadly words on Arbor, and you can also practice them on Vocab Slam. So now if we were to answer this question, we've highlighted our deadly words. Remember, you can take a highlighter into the exam and do this for yourself. So let's have a look at the question. It does state you do not need to write in full sentences. So we just need to pick out the precise bit of information that the examiners want. In this question, they ask, what does she say about languages? So as we were previously discussing, it's going to be in this bit here. Pour faire ce travail, il faut être sportive et parler au moins une langue étrangère. So in order to do this job, so she's talking about her brother's job, that's the title of the text, you have to be sporty, that's not about languages, and you have to speak at least one foreign language, and he speaks English and Spanish. So therefore, we could write down he, her brother, speaks English and Spanish. To be a ski instructor, you have to be able to speak at least one other language. This would be a more precise answer. So using a new paragraph, are you able to spot any small but deadly words here? Remember to pause the recording now so that you can have a go by yourself without me just telling you the answers. I would definitely have highlighted jamais, because I can clearly see that there's a negative there, and I have a habit in these tests of going through, looking at the text and highlighting the negatives straight away so they don't catch me out. I might also have put le, because what does the le even refer to in that sentence? It doesn't seem to be before a noun like it usually is, so it must refer to a person or an object that has previously been mentioned in the paragraph. So what would a precise answer look like for this question? Why is this centre ideal for active pets? Again, you can pause it to make sure that you definitely have time to give me an answer. Key thing to bear in mind here is active pets. Why would a centre be ideal for pets who want to be active, not just pets in general? Have a look, see if you can get the answer. Pause to make sure you've got enough time, and then you can replay when you're ready. So if we go back to that bit with the negative, we can see that the dogs are never something. And here, look, we've got cages. So if you're an active pet, you probably don't want to spend all your time in a cage, do you? So these dogs are never in cages. Instead, they prefer to let them roam freely in liberty. They have their own liberty for their comfort. Okay, so the active pets are allowed to go around out of their cage, are allowed to roam freely. Let's have a look at the mark scheme. So what they don't want are statements that you've clearly randomly guessed. So for example, going on walks. It doesn't tell you anything about going on walks. We can infer that, but it definitely doesn't mention it. What it does mention is that they're never in cages. They're not locked up. They're free to run around. They have liberty to do as they please. You can see in the reject pile it has they are comfortable. I think that's because here you've got the word comfort. So some pupils would have looked at that and just thought, oh yeah, the dogs are really comfortable. But if you think about it, that wouldn't make it ideal for active pets. What about being comfortable would only apply to active pets. So when we're being precise, we're looking at the information we've been given and we're making it fit the question. So let's have a look at another question. What can the owners do to check on their pets while they are on holiday? Remember, we want a precise answer. We want to show the examiner that you've really understood the text. So the answer most likely is going to be in this section because we've already used sentence 1 for one of the questions. Why would this example not be precise? Look on a website. Why would that not be precise? What can owners do to check on their pets while they are on holiday? So let's take a look at the mark scheme. So you could see that the examiners have clearly ruled out look on a website. That's most likely because anyone could glance at this and see the word internet and think, oh yeah, you could just go on a website, you could just have a look, check on your pets. However, we need to be precise. So the real answer, what they will accept is you can watch what your dog is doing by looking at a video. You can watch a video on the website. You can watch CCTV. You can video call them. You could use the internet to video them. So the importance is, because you could just be looking on a website and see some pictures of dogs and you want to know that your dog is safe on holiday. So you're watching this video. That's what this dog hotel is offering to people. So again, another example of how being precise can get you the mark, but being a little bit half-hearted will not get you the full marks. How about this paragraph? Can you spot any small but deadly words here? Remember, pause the recording so you can do this by yourself before I give you the answers. Straight away, I see plus, I see pas, a second example of pas, aujourd'hui, because this is happening today, it's not happening tomorrow, it's not in the past, it's aujourd'hui. And this one here is one of our favorite ones that we're always talking about in class. It looks like it would be a negative, but it's a ne que, and they've combined it also with rarely. So that's quite an important one. I think that has the potential to trick us quite a lot in the questions. So what would a precise answer look like for this question? What kind of student was Pierre at school? The answer seems to be in this line. Je n'étais pas travailleur au collège et je n'écoutais pas en classe. So lots of things that he didn't do. Could I get away with just writing he wasn't a good student? Let's have a look at the mark scheme. So the mark scheme specifically wants us to say that he was lazy, he didn't listen in class, he was a bad student, he didn't work, he wasn't working. What they don't want you to put is just was naughty, bad behaviour. They don't want you to put something general. They want you to say that as a student, he wasn't listening, he wasn't working hard enough. They want you to be precise about what it actually says about Pierre. So how about this question? How has Pierre changed? Scanning through the text, I could see here some past tense. Music was my passion. Music used to be my passion. And then we've got a comparison with today. So music used to be my passion. Today, and we've got that very complicated combination of small but deadly words. Today, I only listen, rarely, to rock music. So what does that actually mean? I only listen rarely to rock music. Music used to be his passion. So it seems that he's changed styles. He doesn't really like rock music anymore. He only rarely listens to it. So therefore, when we look at the mark scheme, we don't want to see things, we don't want to see people misinterpreting the negatives and putting he never listens to rock music. He doesn't ever listen to it. They want to see that he rarely listens to it. He seldom, he doesn't often listen to it anymore. That's how he's changed. His taste in music has changed. He doesn't really listen to it as much as he used to do. It's not his passion anymore. So let's have a look at another question. How many small but deadly words can you spot in this paragraph? Make sure you pause so you've got time to do this. I can see a lot in here. I can see très, mais, pas. So I would definitely have my highlighter and I would have highlighted that one because it's a negative. I could see très again. I could see maintenant, which is a clear indication that they're going to say, I used to blah, 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 but now blah, blah, blah. So that one's a really good one to look out for. It's kind of like aujourd'hui in the previous one. So let's have a look at a poor answer. Why would this one receive 0 marks? What happened when Adam achieved poor grades? He had to redo the exams. So this one might seem like a little bit of a trick. It definitely has the word to redo, redoubler. However, if you'll remember from class, redoubler actually means resitting the whole year. This is something that's commonly done in European schools and they still do it today in France, even though there's a lot of debate about it. So if you just write that he had to redo one of his exams, that would not be correct. Or if you just wrote he had to do it again, that's not precise. What did he have to do again? You've got to be precise. If you see anything about redoubler, about retaking, make sure you state that it's retaking the year of that class. Section B looks like the most difficult one because it's all in French. However, if you take a matchup approach and you're very careful about synonyms and antonyms, it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. For example, in this question, you've got 4 different people talking about jobs. You've also got a list of statements. Let's have a look at statement 1. Somebody a travaillé, E with an accent, so we know it's happened in the past tense, à l'extérieur. Somebody worked in the exterior, so that means outdoors. Somebody did a job that was outside. Now, if I'm purely trying to match the same words, I can see straight away that Damien has the word exterior in his paragraph. However, I've got to be smarter than that. I've got to look at what he's actually saying. Did he work outdoors? At the beginning of the sentence, it clearly says, I worked in a hotel. So that doesn't really sound very outdoorsy. So why does he mention it later on? I would hate to work outdoors. So that's one of those tricks. We don't want to put Damien for A just by matching up the words, because actually he says that he hates it. But who did work outdoors? If we scan through each person, we can kind of get an idea of where they were working. So for example, Beatrice is working at the Hôtel de Ville, so the town hall. That's not really outdoorsy. Anouk wanted to do a placement in the tourist office, but it doesn't seem like it was a good idea there. It doesn't seem like she could do that. So she ended up in the Centre Commercial. She ended up in the shopping centre. So that leaves us with Christophe. Did Christophe work outdoors? Now straight away there's an antonym here, look, interior. So you might think, oh, that's the opposite. Christophe, he worked inside. But actually, if you've been highlighting your negatives, you will see that working indoors is not for him. His dad is a builder and he offered him a placement. He likes to work in the plein air, in the outdoors. So it's clearly Christophe who is going to be the right answer. So you've got to approach these questions a bit like you would a puzzle, by discounting bits of information, by matching other bits of information, but you've got to be really careful. Don't just pick the first word that you see, read around the words. Question 9 on the higher paper tends to be one that pupils find more challenging. However, I think of this question as the copy and paste question. There's normally quite a lot of text and it tends to be about a government initiative or something that's going on around the world. The questions look like this. You will notice that they are full sentences in French, and they also ask you to answer in French. This is where some pupils find it very difficult to come up with a precise and correct answer. However, the secret to these questions is to look carefully, as we always do, at what the question is actually looking for, find the relevant bit of information in the text, and copy and paste it over. Where you have to be really careful is that you're copying and pasting the right bit. So let's have a look at the first one together. What are the key words in the first question? Well, you've got la durée moyenne. So the duration, average, the average duration of refugees staying in the camp, if we look at the rest of the question. So what time on average do they tend to spend in this camp? So now if we scan through the text for the bit that we want to lift, we can see here, on average, en moyen, 17 années dans un camp de réfugiés. So we can see here we've got clearly an average and then a number. Let's have a look at the mark scheme. As you can see, they are clearly looking for 17 années, 17 years. So this is the answer that they're looking for. Notice that they're going to reject 17 by itself, because that could be 17 weeks, 17 months, 17 hours. They definitely want you to put 17 years. Notice also that they don't want a full sentence, they just want to know the exact bit of information that they have asked for. So for the next one, what is the key phrase? We have livre premièrement. Now this one confused a lot of pupils because they thought that livre was referring to a book. However, if you notice, before the word livre, we've got on. So it's a verb here. What do you deliver? What do we deliver? Premièrement, first of all. So not the second thing that they need, not the final thing that they need. What is the first thing that you deliver to them in a case of crisis? So scan through the text. Can you find the first thing that you would deliver? Remember, you can pause this recording now if you need more time. So a synonym for firstly is here, tout d'abord. So first of all, in case of emergency. And here you've got a different way of saying it. Look, the delivery of food and water, potable, drinkable water, is essential. After that, you've got logement, so accommodation, vêtements, clothing, et la fourniture de services médicaux, so it's medical supplies. So as you can see, they're clearly hoping that you will have a look and choose one of the first options. And in the mark scheme, you can see that here, that they want nourriture or l'eau. And you don't even have to put drinking water, look, you just have to put water in general. But it's always best to play it safe if you notice an extra detail like that. It's telling us to reject clothing and accommodation and medical supplies because they are not the first thing. The key word here really was premièrement and tout d'abord. So in question C, here look, we've got apart from books. So the answer is not going to be books. Apart from books, what do the refugees receive from the organisation? So we want something that they get from the organisation that isn't just books. Because probably you could guess that, look, because it's a bibliothèque. Bibliothèque sans frontières, libraries without borders. That's a play on the organisation of Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. So apart from books, can you spot what else they receive from this organisation? So in the mark scheme, we've got access to culture and information. And you can see that here, look, it provides to refugees access to culture and information. Will they accept anything else? Well, yes, they'll accept to help to reconstruct or recreate links, or une médiathèque en kit, so an ideas box, a kind of box of supplies that they're going to deliver to you. What they won't accept is to just make links again. They want the idea of helping them to make links. So that answer was down here in paragraph 3. And also a little bit, you can see in paragraph 2. So you can see in paragraph 2, you've got the bit about reconstructing links, and you've got the sentence where it says that this organisation helps them to achieve this objective. So what about D? What is the contribution of Philip Stark to the project? So what exactly does he do? What's the point of him? What's his role? So we can easily scan through and find his name here. So, le dessinateur mondialement connu dit travailler en partenariat avec Bibliothèques Sans Frontières pour créer Ideas Box est pour moi une expérience inoubliable. So what is it that he actually contributes? What would you put for this answer? Let's have a look at the mark scheme. Remember to pause if you need more time. So they have put, he is the drawer, he is the designer, he is the person that creates Ideas Box. So you've got this idea of dessiner. You've also got il a travaillé, so he worked in partnership in order to create Ideas Box, or he created Ideas Box, the Médiathèque en Kit. So he's the one that's kind of designed it. They don't want you just to lift random things from the text, because if you lift this bit here, it says to work in partnership, unforgettable experience. That doesn't really answer the question. So you've got to mention that he is the person that created this Ideas Box. And the final one, quel est l'avantage principal? What is the principal, what is the main advantage of Ideas Box? So we can clearly see in the final paragraph that yes, it is easy to transport, but the most important, so most importantly, you can install it in 20 minutes. So it's very easy to set up. So as we just saw, question 9 is not that difficult if you again think about being precise and you think about copying and pasting. However, not just copying massive chunks of text. So let's have a look at this question. If you want time to scan this through and try to translate bits of it, you can pause now. Otherwise, carry on and look at question 1 with me. So in question 1, the keywords, we've got problems that exist, and we've got record rain northeast of France. So here, this is a question where it's looking for 2 examples of problems that the record amount of rain in the northeast of France has caused. We can probably guess what these problems are going to be just by thinking about the kind of problems that we face in England when there's lots of rain. However, this question, we're thinking about lifting a certain part of the text. Straight away, I see the words northeast, and I would have used my highlighter to highlight a negative here. This bit is simply saying about in the northeast, the rain didn't cease, it didn't stop falling for several days. So that's not really an answer. That's not a problem that's come about because of the rain. It's just explaining that the rain didn't stop falling. If I scan later on, I see another instance of the use of the northeast. And in this sentence, I see it is impossible to circulate, meaning that the cars can't get about. And even the schools have been closed. Now, I don't want to copy every single bit about the northeast. I just want to lift the information that the examiner is asking me for. So I'm going to take it is impossible to circulate and the schools have been closed. I didn't even put the schools have even been closed. I just literally stated the fact. So let's have a look at the second question. Which region of France noticed or, recorded the record amount of rain? So again, let's have a look through the text. We're looking for one region only. We're looking for a region where the rain was record-breaking. So here, look, we see Île-de-France, which is actually the region where Paris is. On n'avait jamais, so again, I would have highlighted that. We never We never registered, look, we never saved, we never recorded, we never registered so much rain in 1 month only. So again, I don't need to copy everything. I just need to give a region. And remember that place names normally have capital letters. So that one is quite easy to spot. So in this question, we're talking about les pompiers, which I hope that you would remember from the work topic is about firefighters. So what was the role of the firefighters in all of this? What did they do? So again, this is one of those questions where you can probably use common sense to guess what the answer will be. However, we want an answer in French. We want to lift the relevant answer from this text. Scanning through, I can see at the bottom we have this line here which is clearly about les pompiers. We've got the word évacuer, so it looks like they were evacuating people, people who were bloqués, people who were blocked by the water. Again, I don't want to just copy everything, I want to be really precise. I just want to answer what role did they play. So I don't really need all of this bit at the start about, oh, actually they intervened more than 8,000 times. I don't need all of that. I just need one thing that they actually did. And on the mark scheme, it will accept évacuer des personnes, so evacuate some people. The final question on the reading paper looks like this. It's a translation into English. Now, the only difference between the higher and the foundation is that the higher tends to be a little bit more complicated. They like to put in higher grammar to check if you understand it, or some words that are a little bit more confusing to see if you can figure out the meanings. This is the final question on the paper. However, I recommend that you do a first draft early in the test, and then you can go back to it with fresh eyes and check that your English actually makes sense before finishing the paper. A classic mistake that pupils make on this one is to try to translate it word by word. However, if you do that in French, you're going to end up with quite a messy sentence. For example, the one appearing on your screen now. And as a higher candidate, I'm sure that you'd be able to work out that adjectives need to go before nouns and make sure that generally you're not mixing up your French and English word order. So let's have a look at this one. Remember, as I've suggested in class, I would break this up into sections, and it's worth 7 marks, so I would actually look for 7 sections. You can do that now, pause and do it by yourself, or you can watch me do it. I usually pick full stops as my starting point and commas, and then if I don't quite have 7, I look for longer sentences and put some gaps in the middle. Then, instead of looking at individual words, you can gather information section by section. You can treat it like a chunk and try to work out the gist. So in this one, j'apprends l'italien à l'université. You've got these different sections. You know that you've got something about I am the one doing the action. You've got Italian and you've got university. So a logical sentence, if you're trying to get the gist, might be I study Italian at university. I am learning Italian at university, I'm studying Italian, anything along these lines. But do you see that now you've got the overall gist of that sentence and you're not struggling because you're stuck at word number 2? I've recommended this to you in class before. Try to be like a detective when you're doing the translation. So ask yourself the following questions. Who is doing the action? So in this one you've got I. Are there any time phrases? In this one, no. Which tense is being used? Well, here we don't have E with an accent. We don't have anything about je voudrais or je vais, so it's just present tense. Are there any negatives? Here, no. Are there any small but deadly words? For example, I like studying this, but I'm not going to do it next year, something along those lines. And what is the gist of that sentence? How about this one? So in this sentence, you've got mon frère, my brother. You've got a negative. So it's my brother is not or does not want, something along those lines. It's got to be something negative about the brother. For this one, again, we've got a mention of he, and we've got a tense here. He is going to do. For this one, I'm hoping that straight away you're thinking, oh, miss, look, E with an accent. Because every time you see that, I'm sure by now you should recognize that it's past tense. This one here, again, notice things such as mon, my. Okay, son or sa would be his or her. In this one, you've got a little word, you've got if we speak another language. And finally, in this one, again, we're still on the topic of, we're still on the person we. So if we speak another language, we can. And be careful of things, such as these false friends. So this is not travel, this is work, we can work. And this is not to pay, this is a country. So we can work in a different country if we speak another language. So it's good to think of yourself as a detective, breaking down the chunks, working out what is the gist, who is doing this, what might they be doing. So here is an example from the higher reading paper. It's still worth 7 marks, but it's a little bit more complex. Have a go yourself at splitting this one. Pause the recording and then join me again and I will go through the answers. So if I were to split this up, I would of course go for the full stops first of all, and once I have my different sections, I ask myself these questions. Who is doing the action? Are there any time phrases? Which tense is being used? Are there any negatives? Are there any small but deadly words? What is the gist? What are they trying to communicate to me? And can I communicate that in a different language to someone else? What an amazing skill to have, by the way, that you've developed now by year 11. So pause now, see if you can do this by yourself, and then I will reveal the answers to you. So hopefully you're listening to this after you've finished the pause. So here are the answers for each section, and you can see if you got them right. So for the first one, my knowledge of French allows me to travel more easily. The second one, my linguistic abilities have allowed me to find a job in Switzerland. If you want to work abroad, you can find a vacancy for which we need someone who speaks good French. Without having studied it, I would not have, conditional tense, met my Swiss friends. So remember, the reading exam is divided into these 3 sections. You want to really make the most and get all the marks you can get. For a higher candidate, let's look at the harshest grade boundaries again. Remember, you want to try to be getting at least 31 out of 50 for a grade 7. So every mark we can get counts. Just by reading the questions really carefully and bearing in mind to keep your answers very precise, you should be absolutely fine. And don't forget your highlighter on the day of the exam. Before you go, do you remember what I said about making sure you do the translation early and you come back to it later on? This is why. Let's read back that translation that we just wrote. My knowledge of French allows me to travel more easily. My linguistic abilities have allowed me to find a job in Switzerland. If you want to work abroad, you can find a vacancy for which we need someone who speaks good French. Without having studied it, I would not have met my Swiss friends. Does that sound like something that you would hand into your English teacher, or are there some phrases that sound a little bit bizarre? Reading it back, I don't really like the way that I've used my knowledge of French allows me, and then straight away my linguistic abilities have allowed me. That sounds a little bit clunky. And later on this bit, you can find a job for which we need someone who speaks good French. Again, it sounds a little bit strange. So I want to make it sound more pleasant for someone to read, but I can't risk changing any of the meanings because that might lose some marks. So first of all, this word, my linguistic abilities. How about if I put my linguistic skills? My linguistic skills, instead of have allowed me, have enabled me. My linguistic skills have enabled me to find a job in Switzerland. How about this clunky bit for which we need someone who speaks good French? Can you think of something? I think I would change it to which requires someone who speaks French well. My linguistic skills have enabled me to find a job in Switzerland. If you want to work abroad, you can find a vacancy which requires someone who speaks French well. Always leave time at the end of the reading exam to check through your translation, and if you've left any gaps, make a sensible guess. So that's all for now. Well done for listening, well done for having a go just before your exam. If you've got any final questions, please email me. And if you want to do any last-minute revision, you can go back over parts of this video, or you can go through the themes on Vocab Slam and make sure that you learn as much vocabulary as you can before that test. Bon courage, au revoir! There are lots of little words in French which some students ignore while they're reading. This is very dangerous because they can actually change the whole meaning of the sentence, so you need to look out for them. That's why we call them the small but deadly words. Sometimes they are synonyms. They mean the same as each other. For example, easy and simple. Or sometimes they are antonyms. They mean the opposite, easy and difficult. You need to make sure that you've revised the small but deadly words. You can do this by pausing this screen and looking up any words that you don't know, or you can have a look on Vocab Slam because there's a whole set called Small but Deadly Words which has all of the words which might possibly come up in the exams. And while we're on the subject of Vocab Slam, if you go onto it and you look at the exam zone and exam vocab, you can go through all of the keywords from the past papers, or you can pick a set that's called Examiner's Favourites, which has keywords which we've seen coming up again and again on all of the past exams. I would recommend that you spend some time doing this tonight after watching this video and tomorrow morning right before your exam. Well done for watching this video. You deserve to do really, really well in this test because you've been working hard in class for 5 years. The finishing touches now are just looking up keywords and being very careful when you read the exam itself. So, slam some vocab, go over your Easter booklet so you can read the kind of phrases which have come up in the past, and don't forget, most importantly, to get some rest. I will see you first thing in the morning tomorrow. Bonne chance!